And if you could do us a favor, and if you're currently a part of a chapter, if you could rename yourself and put what chapter you're with, that would be really helpful. Also, if you don't mind, you can put your first and last name in rename yourself with your first and last name. That helps us out with the attendance for tonight. Yeah, so we're the Inland Empire chapter. We have a wonderful demonstration orchard at the Rupert Mountain Discovery Center, which is our normal meeting space. We're currently meeting via Zoom for COVID purposes, but we usually meet at the Rupert Mountain Discovery Center in person. Great demonstration orchard out there with lots of different fruits and stuff. There is going to be a compost tea and foliar spray workshop. It's going to be August 28th. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Upper Orchard. So if you do plan to go, it'd be great if you put it in the message. We'll get you in contact with Christine, who runs all of our workshops. She'll give you the directions on where to go and how to get in without having to pay for parking, because they might try to charge you if you don't say the right code word. Yeah. Got quite a lot of stuff here on the calendar for the rest of 2021. Got a orchard committee meeting. So for Sunday, August 29th. So anybody that's interested in being a part of the committee, the steering committee for the orchard, that's on the 29th. And then our next meeting will be the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. We're gonna have our wonderful mentor basically of the group, Larry Dodson, talking about air layering. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to chime in. If not, we'll turn it over. Any questions real quick? Comments? Did I miss anything, Lisa and or Christine? All right, I guess no news is good news. So for our presenter tonight, we have Mr. Rod Chamberlain. Mr. Chamberlain is one half of the owner-operators of Long Farms. Long Farms specializes in mangoes and outdoor hydroponic tomatoes. They are located in Mecca, California, out in the Coachella Valley. Long Farms produces Keat and Valencia Pride varieties for market. They have roughly 1,000 mango trees in operation, and they are a family farm operation run by Mr. Chamberlain, his wife, and their 2 sons. So looking forward to having a great chat here. The way we kind of run these things is any question you have, please put it into the chat box. If it is a pertinent question, I will pipe in and ask Mr. Chamberlain to answer that. Anything tangential, we'll save to the end. So it's going to be about a 40-minute chat. Again, any questions you have, feel free to put them into the chat box, and yeah, we'll go from there. It's all you, Rod.
All right. Well, I guess I've made a PowerPoint presentation to kind of help me through this. So let me share my screen. And yes. All right. So how'd that come through? All right.
I think you have to pick when the pop-up comes. There we go. Now we can see it.
Yeah, it might be a little slow because I am on my phone. So things, especially when it's taking pictures and things, it may be a little slow. So
looks great. Looks great, Rod.
Yeah, so a little patience, So basically, this is kind of a shot of the farm. You can see the Salton Sea there in the background, the hydroponic tomato system here in the front, and then the mangoes are just here in the back and a little bit out of the shot over on the other side. So one thing I want to do is make sure that you all are aware that we're down in a very unique environment here in the kind of what's called the Lower Sonoran Desert, which is we're about 45 minutes south of Palm Springs, and it's a very hot environment during the summer. I think yesterday we hit officially was 122 in Palm Springs, and I think it was possibly a little warmer here. We do get kind of mediated a bit by the Salton Sea, but it's not terribly significant. So here I just put in some temperatures here just to kind of give everybody an idea. Now, this chart here is average temperatures. So I'm not exactly sure how they came up about the average, whether it's, you know, the day, high night or low night average, or whether it's just, you know, or even the maximum here, but it is pretty significant. We don't have much in the rainfall. So we're 100% in the irrigation category. There's no natural rainfall or anything like that that we can rely on down in this area. So unfortunately, with them, but one thing we found over the years is the mango is a very heat tolerant tree. I think that maybe it's basically evolved in the areas where it's more tropical, but in a lot of the tropical areas, you have a significant, typically hot, dry spell that kind of also associated with the prior to the monsoon seasons. And so my understanding is from people that know a lot more than I do, is that the mango is one of the few trees that can actually control its stomatal openings, which can, you know, basically slow down when it gets into a water stress or situation, or high heat situation, can actually reduce its evapotranspiration, which makes it extremely drought tolerant. So I've seen postings over at time and a lot of questions that gives people say, you know, how about the heat? What's it going to do? And, you know, I think mangoes are probably about as tolerant of a tree as you can get, probably more so than even citrus and things like that. So if you're having issues with that kind of with what you think might be temperature issues, you know, I'd look for things like salt or other things that might be accumulating that might be giving you some overall problems. But here I just kind of gave you a little bit of a shot here on, you can see where this was back in June, where we had a little stint of real hot weather. You know, you can see here on day one, it was in the 115. We kind of dropped back down. Then our high jumped back up 117, 118, 115, 118. It is not unusual for us to go through multiple days at several different times of the summer to hit these 3, 4, 5 days of very hot temperatures. And so it is extreme. And so some of the things that I'll be talking about today may or may not be exactly transferable to your situation, depending on where you're growing. And so keep that in mind, that you know, almost every area is somewhat unique. And you know, so it's a lot of this information or things that we do may or may not be transferable. We're kind of situated in an area that's unique. We're on a alluvial fan out of the Oricopia Mountains, which is down to the east of Mecca, which is basically right on the north end of the Salton Sea. Because of that, we have a very coarse sand and rock. It's a large sand rock type of a soil. And as a result of that, we have a very low water holding capacity to the soil. And of course, as you can imagine, a very low organic content. So there's a little bit of fine tuning, if you will, that goes into to growing the mangoes in this environment. And I'll get into that as we go through the talk. Just to give you a little background, basically the farm operation was started by my wife's parents back in the early 70s. And they first started, it was originally started as a hydroponic tomato operation, growing operation, which we still do today. But we started with the mangoes, or my father-in-law started with the mangoes before he passed away. Never really had any time, he never saw any production, but basically he was kind of following the path of a gentleman down here that owned a company called Sun World, who had gone to Israel, seen some mango operations, and wanted to bring them back here into the Coachella Valley. And so my father-in-law was able to get about 100 trees of quite a large, I think he had 25 to 30 different varieties that he planted on the initial 1 acre planting. And he planted them on 15 by 15 foot centers, which now we don't quite use that same approach. But in those days, it was, it was kind of do what you think's best. And I think that was about what some of the very tight varieties, some of the lemons and things like that were done on those kind of planting intervals. And so that was what was used at the time. After about 5, maybe 6 years of growth, they saw all kinds of issues. Some of them didn't grow well. Some of them couldn't take the heat when it came in. Some of them couldn't take the cold. Some of them didn't produce, all kinds of different things with all the different varieties. And, basically it came down to the two varieties, the Valencia Pride and the Kit, that seemed to be the best overall growers, and actually were producing fruit and flowered, and seemed to be the best of the group that were tried. And by 2004, basically, my wife had top worked all the trees that were there. That was by 2004. That was all we were involved with those two varieties. In 2005, we planted an additional 100 trees. And of course, back in those days, still, we didn't really quite know what we wanted or what we were doing, and planted them again on 15 by 15 foot centers. In 2008, we started to see that, of course, the original trees were getting quite big. And so we started to see that, that might be a little too tight, and in particular, weren't getting a lot of fruit production where the trees were growing together. And particularly on the spacing between the rows, it was the front trees being, as they got taller, started to shade the back trees. And so we started to actually move them on 15 foot centers. In 2008, we planted another 200 trees, and we went 15 foot centers on the row, but 25 foot centers on the road. So that in response to the bigger growth of the trees. And then we were able to purchase some more land. And in 2014, we planted an initial 400 trees. And that was done on 25 by 25 foot centers. And it was the reason we went to 25 by 25 for those particulars. One, we had quite a bit of land available. And we were kind of focused on the Valencia Pride, which is a very desirable fruit and an early producer. We're actually about to end up the season here probably in the next few weeks. So it does start in mid-July, and which is nice. It gets us into the market. So anyway, those were planted on 25 foot centers. So now we've planted a few more trees here and there and a few different varieties. We now have up to about 1,000 total trees on the farm. And it roughly is about 20% Kit, 5% Nam Doc Mai, 15% Golden Lady, which is a variety that I'll show you a little bit later in the presentation. I really don't know what it is, and we went through we tried to get it identified. We took a sample of it back to Florida, and nobody could really pinpoint exactly what it was. And so the suggestion was just, well, why don't you just, in the meantime, just go ahead and name it whatever you want and sell it. And then when we figure out what it is, we'll let you know. And if it's yours, you can just keep selling it as whatever you want. Basically under the the guys that, you know, you don't have to be in Kentucky to sell Kentucky Fried Chicken. So anyway, so now we call it the Gold Lady. Originally started out with a different name. It got picked up on a commercial level, so we changed it back to the Golden Lady, and that's how we've been selling it as for the last 5-6 years or so.
Hey, Rod, you just broke
Yeah.
up a little bit.
Yeah, is everything going okay?
Yeah, it sure did. But we
Oh,
just missed.
okay.
You changed the name briefly and then changed it back. What was it changed to?
Well, we originally, gosh, what's the Alfonso called now? You guys know what the one that comes in from Mexico? Do you remember what it was?
I
No,
personally
you
don't
don't.
know.
Okay, they picked it up, and I can't remember what it was. Gosh, if somebody said I tell you it was, you know, something that's pretty common, and I think but
Altufo?
anyway, yeah, we originally pardon?
Altufo? I guess not.
No.
Yeah. I thought it
Anyway.
was- yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so anyway, you know, basically we were calling it that, and the commercial growers picked up the name and started using it, importing into the United States out of Mexico. So so we dropped it and went to the Golden Lady. We really weren't selling a lot at the time anyway, so it was not that big of a deal. I'll show you, I have pictures later in the presentation, and you know, it's a smaller fruit, but really it has a unique flavor, very, very good fruit. But it's a very early producer, and that's why it actually comes in early June, and that's why we want to move toward it as well, to try to extend our system or our market presentations to go that we can start in early June and go with the Golden Lady, move into the Valencia Pride and the Nam Doc Mai in the midsummer, and then the Kit's a later producer that comes in toward the August and even September, and we've had it in years actually move back and go into October, as late as October. So gives us an extended picking period for our fruit, and kind of helps with keeping the employees paid and so on and so forth, you know, with the cash flow. So anyway, so as a kind of as a result of trying to make trees to expand our operation, we started a nursery operation, and then of course now it is expanded to some degree. So our and when we were doing this back in the 90s, it was almost impossible to bring trees from out of state. California was and for those of you that probably have gotten stuff out of Florida and different places have probably seen, it is not easy to get stuff into California where they're concerned about invasive species and things. So a lot of what we started doing was just picking up rootstock fruit that would come off of the existing original trees, taking those seeds and then grafting those. So originally we started very slowly. We're only able to produce a certain number of trees, you know, a very limited number of trees in the period of time. And in fact, I had gone back and talked to one person back in Florida while I was back in Florida. He was trying to start a farm out in Imperial County, 40 acres of land, contracted with a nursery back there for literally thousands of trees. And his first semi that came in hit the Arizona-California border on Interstate 8. They found 7 trees that they had an unknown condition with, and they turned the whole truck around, and the guy told me he lost almost $1 million. So not a very fun situation to deal with. But even today, with you know, all the mangoes that are brought into the United States, and because of the some of the fruit flies and the weevil, the mango weevils and different things. All the fruit has to be heat treated to 170 degrees for 20 minutes, heated, and so that it kills any of the larvae or eggs that might be in the fruit or before it can be imported into the U.S. So the U.S. and California continue to be very, very concerned about importing, and they have the requirements of, if you do import from out of the state, bringing it in from a certified nursery operation that's certified to export into, or send into the state of California. Now, it doesn't apply to scions. From what my understanding is, scions can be sent without, from anywhere, without any kind of certification, but that, or at least somebody told me that. So I don't know if anybody is, has had experience with that. Please let me know. I just have been told that the scions are something that they don't have to be checked.
Rod, do you currently sell trees?
Yes,
The nursery is
we
open.
do. Nursery is open, and I'll get into that as well. This is our rootstock that we have developed is primarily turpentine, which is the Florida rootstock, if you're familiar with that. Manila, which is and the Namdok Mai, and these are all polyembryonic mango seeds or trees that produce polyembryonic. There's polyembryonic seeds actually will produce a actual clone of the original parent. So and that combined, they have several different embryos within each seed. If you look at a polyembryonic seed, you'll see, if you're familiar with it, you'll see very separate lobes within the seed when you get it taken apart out of the husk. And each one of those embryos will produce a tree. So if you put a seed into the ground of any of these species or any polyembryonic species, you will get typically 2, 3 trees, 4 trees. Some species will run up. I've seen where they've actually taken and had 3, 4, 5, even up to 9 different embryos within one individual seed in some species. So typically the polyembryonic species are the ones that are the original Asian or type material or mangoes, from India and Thailand, Eurasia, those areas, where the ones that a lot of the ones that we eat or get imported and stuff are called monoembryonic, and those you're kind of gambling, because the monoembryonic seeds are going to give you a less reliable fruit production or copy of the original parental fruit. But one thing with the polyembryonic, they're pretty good, from what we've seen, pretty vigorous rootstocks. So basically on the year one, we basically collect the ripened fruit, we clean it and clean the flesh, and dry the seeds, and then pull the seed out of the husk. Then germinate it. You can see in the photograph with the cups, those are the seeds that are actually germinating. I don't know how well this is coming across, but as you can go from left to right, you can see they turn green, and you can start to see the individual roots develop within some of the seeds. And then as you move to the right, you can see the ones that got put into the cups a few days ago. Those stay pretty light, and of course there's no roots coming from them. About year 2, they get potted once they have nice germination to them. And then we basically evaluate the growth, the condition of the tree, how vigorous it's growing, and we do that at the young stage. If there's any, marginal trees and things like that, what we try to do is call those out at that point. And then in the year two, with some of the trees will get grafted at the end of the second year go around. But then year three is basically where most of the trees get grafted in, or the saplings will get grafted in year three, and then put into the under shade cloth structures for grow out. And so that's kind of the seed production, nursery production. You can see here in this photograph, there's some of the tinfoil there. Those are grafted trees. Those would be 2 to 3 year old trees there. In the background, you're seeing some older trees, and this is in the nursery shot. And so basically in our nursery operation, of course, we do have the ungrafted rootstock available, and the three varieties of mangoes that we sell are the Kit, the Valencia Pride, and then the Golden Lady. So, and those are available, and I'll give you some more information. If anybody's interested, we do bring them to the farmers markets that we go to, where we take the fruit and so on. And, but the trees are available year round. We're not a big nursery operation. I think we do, this year we're pushing it up this year, and we hope to plant as much as 3,000 trees, but I think we've been more in the 1,000 to 1,500 range prior to that. So anyway. Irrigation. Go ahead.
Quick question here about grafting, or about rootstocks. Do you recommend cutting flowers off young trees so they can focus on foliage growth?
Yeah, for the first year, like I said, we're selling a 3-year-old tree until the tree's about 2 or 3 feet. Definitely, absolutely. I mean, the fruit that it puts on is going to really weigh it down. If a young tree, can do almost irreparable damage to it, because the fruit will just drag them to the ground. But after a couple of years in the ground, then I tell people, now let them, once you get it up about 4 feet or something like that, it's got to, go ahead and let it go. It'll hold what it can. The mangoes, they seem to be able to deal with it. If it's too much, they'll just basically bend over and let it rest on the ground. And but yes, definitely I would cut the flowers off the first year, get the foliage going, make sure the roots are well established, and the trees in really good health before it goes into any kind of fruit. It's even a small, the small trees, it's amazing, where you get a 2-3 foot tree and it's got 2 or 3 2-pound mangoes hanging on it. The poor thing, you almost feel sorry for them out there in the field. But so yes, I would cut them off the first year, and then of course, as the fruit comes off the new wood. So in essence, the mango fruit makes the tree determinate. In other words, the new wood comes out, goes to the flower and the fruit development, and then that basically stops, and then the branches branch out. So once you do start allowing it to fruit, to produce fruit, you typically don't really need to do much in the pruning side of things. So I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But we really don't do a whole lot of pruning on our trees. Now, again, going back, a lot of our trees are fairly young, under 15 years old, and that's pretty young for a mango. So but it's anyway. Anything else? Pretty much good about the fruit. Are you there?
Yeah, you just broke up, sorry, Rod, so I missed that last comment.
Oh, I totally missed the last comment.
It was about the last 3 or 4 seconds, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Cut the fruit off on a small tree. I'll try to keep it a little sooner. So because of the low retention water retention in the soil, we found over time the best irrigation strategy for us is to water frequently for short durations. And that kind of goes against a lot of standard irrigation practice or commercial application practice. Most of the farms down here in the citrus and different things will actually go in and irrigate every 2 weeks, and they'll flood it, at significant floods and let the soil hold the water for long periods of time. This doesn't work here with this sandy rock material. And I'll show you how we arrived at that. But and then also our macro and micronutrients we've added. We use a chemical injection pump into the irrigation stream to actually fertilize. So the mangoes are almost a little bit on a hydroponic type system. So on. One of the things we've used to kind of determine what our irrigation strategy, these are called a decagon unit. The decagon is a company. We bury probes at different depths in the soil, and then the unit actually looks at the water. They react when they see the water. So here's the probe 1 here in the first line, or the brownish line. Then we have the green line here is the second probe. And then this nearly solid line here is the third probe line as far as water. You can see the irrigation happening on this upper level. A little bit of it translates to the second one, which is the 30-inch. But in a good irrigation system, you don't want the water going beyond the root zone or beyond leaving the system and being unavailable. So you can see here, you want the 48-inch unit to be pretty flat, pretty straight. And so that way, your water isn't going past your root zone. So using the decagon units, we've been able to kind of say, okay, well, we need to put water in at this point, and we can water for this period of time, and the water doesn't penetrate down to past the root zone. So we're getting, a very efficient use of our water. The second thing that we use is called a fluoropulse system. And these are actually probes that go into the tree. We epoxy them into the tree system themselves. And they give us a direct measurement of what's called the suction water potential, the SWP, which is basically the old systems were pressure bombs. I don't know if anybody's botanists or has used the pressure bombs, but you take leaves and you throw them into this thing and you pump it up, and it gives you an SWP, a water potential that it can be correlated with the water availability that the plants or trees or whatever are actually getting. So we get a graph like this that actually comes in, and you can see these are little irrigation points that you can see here, and at different points of the day. And then we get down to our maximum suction, and then of course as it cools off up at the suction water pressure has less suction basically, and so on. So with that, basically we found with these two pieces of equipment, we found over time that we can actually irrigate 3 times a day for a short duration and give the plant and the tree the water that it needs, so it doesn't get short on water, has plenty of water to function and do what it needs to do. And of course, we don't lose water. We pay a very high price for water down here, or in North Shore, and in my area in particular. I know a lot of you people that are maybe growing in the Fallbrook or some of the avocado people are also in a similar situation. So, being efficient with your water is paramount. And so these units, are all basically solar operated and accessible over our smartphones. So they're very convenient. My next step here is to actually put in a clock that an irrigation timer clock that I can communicate more real time with, and be able over my smartphone to actually just go in and change on a individual irrigation to irrigation basis the percentage of the maximum duration that I set. So I can sit there and react very quickly and very efficiently to high and low temperatures during the day and or changes in the weather. So as we go into these real hot spells, I can bring it up, and then as it cools off and less demand on the water for the trees, I can cut it back basically on an irrigation by irrigation basis. So that's one of the things that we've done that I think has been very helpful. The nutrient management here, basically for the mangoes, we use a system that we have a mixing trough, a 300-gallon concentration tank, which is the little white tank there, concentrate where the fertilizers are liquid, or once they're dissolved in water in a concentrate, they're held there. And then there's a small chem pump here that is basically adjustable chemical pump that just injects the concentrate into the water stream. So that we can very accurately meter the fertilizers or what we need into the water as we need it. Most of the fertilizing is done from late September, once the fruit's off, through early May. And what we want to do is try to encourage new flush, new leaf production. And then of course in February, we start getting the flower production, and then set, and then, fruit retention is very important. If anyway, you guys have been around mangoes very much, you're going to, you want to cry every spring when thousands and thousands and thousands of little tiny mangoes drop all over the ground. Fruit you can follow to help with that fruit retention. Although, it's double-edged sword, you want to be careful not to actually get too much. I'm getting another internet connection is not stable. Everything going all right?
Yeah, it's just breaking up a little bit. I mean, if you want, we can try where I can host the screen, or that helps. I can host the
I'm not hearing anything, so I'm just kind of get concerned that
oh no,
that you guys, if you'll speak up if it gets intolerable. All right,
you got it. Are you going to talk about the types of nutrients you put in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here you go.
There's a question about that.
One of the okay. Yeah, one of the things that I, of course, your big three, your NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, or you want to, of course, use that quite often. But potassium nitrate is one of the things that is known to help with the fruit retention. So times I'll track it and I'll keep it, I'll kick it up certain months. And then calcium, of course, is important for the fruit when it's developing, so that you don't get lost, or calcium shortages will turn up this little weird little hard spots in your fruit. And so I use basically a potassium nitrate, a calcinite, what's called calcinite, calcium nitrate, monoammonium phosphate. I used to use diammonium phosphate only because it was more concentrated, but now MAP is just more available commercially. K-Mag, which is a potassium, manganese, and sulfate product. I was using it for a while, and now I've just basically backed off and used Epsom salt, which is magnesium sulfate. And the magnesium is helpful for the flushing as well. It's, for chlorophyll, different various enzymes and things that the tree needs. So those are the primary things. I do use a nutrient pack as well, which is just a concentrated. It's iron. It's got a lot of the minerals and different things in it as well. So, and from during the post set of the fruit, I will actually go in with a potassium nitrate foliar application as well, just to kind of, and that's supposedly helps with the fruit retention as well. Now, I don't have any data. I don't have, other than the fact that, all these smart people who said this is what you should do, and I go do it, and, gosh, I do okay, and, it's just one of those things that you do it, just sounds good, and everybody else does it, I guess. So as I said, the flowers you usually get on the new wood, at the terminal ends of the new branches that are coming out will typically go in, and you'll start to produce the flowers. We start down here, start to see the flowering in February. In the kit, it might not start until actually into March, early March. And as you can see in the photograph here, I mean, literally there's thousands of flowers on each of these bunches, these terminal end flower ends. There's both male and female flowers in each unit. And so, it's one thing with the mango can be self-pollinating, so very self-pollinating. In fact, we don't see very many bees. One reason is in February it's a bit cold, and even on the warm day there doesn't seem to be a lot of bees that come in on the fruit. We see a lot of flies. So we're kind of thinking that, maybe the flies and the wind are probably the most important thing on fertilizer of the mango trees. If people have asked several times, I get oh wow, when the mangoes are flowering, it must just smell magnificent, because they're just thinking of the fruit, so it just translates in your mind that the mangoes, and I kind of tell them, really, it kind of smells a little bit like a wet dog. It's just not something that you would it's not terribly unpleasant, but it's just not something that you just want to go out and sit in the middle and smell. It's just not all that great. So in the flowering stage, of course, it's really critical. We've had, situations where they're in a critical, and you can have some significant temperature changes, some really cold weather come in, rain, things like that. Of course, February and March are pretty, unusual or unstable weather situations. And they can have just those changes can have a huge impact on the pollination. And one thing we've seen from time to time is we'll get the fruit on the trees will be very undersized. And I mean, they're just all, I want to say like the size of it'd normally be a 1 to 2 pound piece of fruit, might be down into the almost cherry or a little bit, like a large cherry to a plum size. And inside you will have no seed. You'll have the husk, there'll be no seed inside. And then, and we've also seen situations where, trees have come up and just had no fruit on them at all. And so it is, from time to time, you can certainly have some serious issues with the pollination, with the fruiting and successful pollination of the trees. So as I said, a lot of the growers have gone and they use a foliar application of a dilute potassium nitrate post flower, and this is supposed to help with the fruit retention and the retention and fruit development. But I just don't know how important it is. There's so many factors involved in the mango flowering and production and so on. It's just hard to pin all this stuff down. But you can see on the photograph here, those brown areas, those are the flowers coming out of the mango trees, and they get quite dense. So there's certainly a lot of opportunity there. The fruit set, usually you'll only get one or two on each branch. You'll only get one or two fruit that will set on each panicle, on each terminal end of the unit. Now, what you see in the photograph here, you can see, a dozen or so pieces of fruit that are sitting there, but most of those are going to fall off. The mango just it can set, but for some reason it just, I don't know, it just got a sense of what it can handle, what it can hold, and it will just start dropping. And so typically we will end this whole panic only end up with one or two fruit on it, on each one of these. Now, because it's the new wood, you can see flowers, and there's just flowers all over the place. It's still, you can have quite a significant amount of fruit, even though there's only one or two at the end of each branch, but that still ends up being a lot of fruit. But you know what, it just, we don't go in and do any kind of thinning like they would in grapes or dates or things like that. Thinning where they go in and take the number of some fruit off of it, and try to get the sizing up and things like that. We don't do any of that. It just seems like the tree knows what it can sustain. And, basically bottom line is, it just seems like, we've done a few things here and there. It just turns out we're just never smarter than a mango tree. So, just kind of let it do its thing. One of the big issues we have during development is sunburn. I heard somebody earlier talking about sunburn on another piece of fruit that they were growing. And so one of the answers down here in the valley to a lot of orchard growers, citrus and different things, is they use a product, a clay-based coating. It's one of the main products is called Surround. It's just a over-the-counter material. It's a clay and I think sulfur. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's sprayed over. If you ever go through some fields, you'll see, and they look like they've got a white coating to them. That's what they've done. But what we do basically is, what we've found is, because we don't go in and wash our product, we basically pick it and take it directly to the market. In fact, we take it in the boxes they get picked into. So we use just paper bags. We use a number 4 paper bag, and this is a picture of one of the rows of mangoes after it's been covered. And so the exposed fruit on the outside, basically we take a number 4 paper bag, cut the bottom of it out, put it over the fruit as it's when it's about pear size or a little bit smaller, just to make sure it's gonna hold on to the tree. Stay at the shoulders of the fruit, and then just let the fruit grow inside. The paper bag provides enough shade to keep that intense sun off of it, so it works well for us. There's a new products coming out now that are polysaccharide based materials that we're trying out, and you know, they don't have, they're not a clay type coating. They're clear. And we, you know, love to be able to use something like that. They're supposed to beef up the skin of the fruit so that it's not as susceptible to the sun burning and so on. It was developed for cherries and to keep them from cracking and rain and stuff. So anyway, those are the type of things that hopefully, you know, we've come up with. And, you know, the paper bag's very, very labor intensive, as you can imagine. And this shot here, I think one thing I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of too is that mangoes are considered alternate producers. And by that, it means the fruit production will be high one year, and then it's followed by a lower year, a lower bearing year. And I think that just has to do, I think it has to do mostly with just the fact that the trees have a tendency to put a lot of energy into the fruit. So when they have a heavy load fruit year, that energy doesn't go into growth and producing new wood for the following year, where, you know, if they carry the fruit for a longer period of time, they just don't have a lot of energy to devote to new wood production. So the following is going to be a lower production. So with everything else involved, you know, it's another thing just to kind of keep in mind, this alternate producing kind of characteristic. I think I just jumped ahead there. So I put this in here just kind of to make sure that, you know, again, the new wood and the pruning on these trees is because the new wood produces the fruit, it kind of becomes, it makes the tree kind of a determinate tree. And then once that fruit sits there, you take it off, new branches start branching out. So you have new wood coming out of the new tree. So, you know, outside of just keeping for aesthetic purposes or whatever, there's really not a lot of pruning that needs to be done, in my opinion. The picture here on the lower right, you can see this is a farm down in Mexico where they just basically take and they go through and literally hedge the trees, and they do that just again, you know, just for make it easier to pick, easier to manicure and do what they need to do, spray, etc. And I don't know that it's really necessary to do from an overall production situation. So, you know, I tell a lot of people is your topping, it's all personal preference. You know, we don't like to get high limbs. They don't produce as much fruit up high. And so getting rid of those higher limbs is good. And basically the rest of the trees, if we do a lot of trimming here at our operation, we like to go in and take the centers out of the trees. We'll just go in and find a main branch in the center, cut it out. It lets a lot of growth go into the center of the tree, the new branches production, and helps it with production in that manner. And then that fruit's a little more shaded from the intense sun. So kind of gives us a little better quality fruit as well. From our harvest and marketing standpoint, we've got here just a real quick and nearly done, Kurt. So we got the Valencia Pride. It's about a 12 to 30 ounce fruit, ripens July to August, typically fiberless, very sweet flavor. Tree is a very large tree, 20 to 30 feet. Maybe even higher than that. We kind of top them off, and they easily get to the top of our pickers, which our picking pulse, which is a pain in the butt and really slows you down. So we don't like to have real high trees anyway. The kit, which is 12 to 28 ounce fruit, it ripens quite late in the season. Again, it's a low fiber. Wouldn't call it quite fiberless, but very, very low fiber, much smaller tree. And the Golden Lady, you can see a picture of it here down in the lower end. It's got this kind of goldish guy. One year now, this year, this is a photo from this year. This year, we had a lot more of the red color coming through. typically it is just a gold color, and then the flesh inside is just a bright orange, and just a very aromatic piece of fruit. Runs about, it's a little smaller fruit, 8 ounces, half to 1 pound piece of fruit. It ripens actually a little bit before, typically a little bit before the Valencia Pride, fiberglass, and we think it's gonna. We haven't really got really mature trees at this point, but we think it's going to end up at about 15 to 20 feet. These trees that we use for our rootstock is the Manila, which a lot of people are familiar with that. They're smaller fruit, up to 1 pound. Typically don't get too much bigger than that. Ripens in July and August. Pretty fibery, and it can have a real strong medicinal flavor. It's that strong turpentine flavor that you get from some trees. It'll grow about 15 to 20 feet. Namdok Mai, real small fruit. This is called the Thai dessert fruit. Instead of desert fruit, it's the dessert fruit. It'll actually ripen in June through July. It's fiberless, very sweet, nice height, a medium height tree, 15 to 30 feet, but it's quite small, but it's an excellent fruit. Turpentine, which is a very small fruit, typically 2 to 4 ounce. Very heavy fiber if you bite into that one. I mean, the flavor is not too bad at all. I mean, it's kind of sweet if you just suck on it, but if you bite into it, you're gonna feel like you're biting into a ball of yarn. Trees are small, really easy to handle, 5 to 10 feet in height, and very nice. So these are the three basic trees at this point that we're using for the nursery rootstock. So most of our harvest and marketing, we specialize in our tree ripened. We go out and we basically pick ripened fruit off the tree. At many operations, what they'll do is they'll wait until a small percentage of the tree of the fruit starts to ripen. They go in and strip it, put it in boxes in a temperature controlled room, and then they just sort through the boxes and send it, or in the case of exported or imported into the United States, it's just put in a box. A lot of it can be gas with ethylene gas, and that will kind of initiate the ripening process too. But you really don't get a lot of the natural sugar. What we do is we go out and we pick the fruit that's basically ripened. We pick the entire farm every 3 days. So we're just in a big rotation, and we pick the ripe fruit and leave the unripe. And then 3 days later, we're back in the same place, picking the fruit again over and over. So that way we can kind of, put out a product that is kind of enjoyable, has good flavor. And I think our customers appreciate that, the effort that we put into that. Most of our markets are Southern California farmers markets. We do about 65% probably of our total production goes into those markets. We do have some wholesale markets, and then we also do some direct sales, but not very much of that. The direct sales here at the farm, people drive up and pick up product, CSA and different things like that. And then all of our tree sales are either here through farmers markets or direct farm sales, people coming to the farm and picking them up. So, and we do take orders and take them to the farmers markets as and when we're going to the market. And a lot of people call and order specific trees, and we'll take them and they'll come pick them up at the market. So it works out pretty well all over. So anyway, that's about all I have. Any questions? This is my name. You can get a hold of us at wongfarms.org. That's our website. A little plug for the operation. Jason is my son. He handles any orders and inquiries, and that would be for both the fruit and the the trees, the nursery trees, and his phone number is there. Also wanted to just real quickly mention a good source of information. If you haven't been there, go to themango.org. That's the National Mango Board website. And they have a research tab on their homepage. And so a lot of information on nutrients, on trimming, on, fertilizers, all kinds of things. They actually fund a lot of research that goes into, there's a lot of other things there that are just, from palatalizing to boxing to, things like that might not be of too much interest, but I think they have some very good synopsis on a lot of research, and they deal with a lot of different companies from around the, basically North and Mexico and South America, Central and South America, and the Caribbean islands. So it's a good place to go check out, and it's got some good reading if you're interested in a lot of that kind of stuff. So I think.
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions, Rod. So thanks so much for that information-packed presentation. Just real quick note, guys, for those that we are going to post, we are recording this presentation. We will post it to our YouTube channel. If you want to get the link sent to you, please put your email address in the chat box. So I'm going to go back through all these questions. There's quite a few. Is it possible to grow mangoes outdoor in zone 8B?
Well, if I knew what 8E was, I'd probably be able to answer it. Is that a hot or a cold zone?
So you already talked about how tolerant mangoes are for heat. How tolerant are they for cold?
I'm going to say they're about the same tolerance as a citrus. So if you can do a citrus tree, you can probably do a mango tree. I would suggest, if you're in a situation like that, you're obviously going to get some really cold, maybe storms come through and things like that. What I've seen people do is take Christmas lights and put around the tree and turn them on, and just kind of give it a little bit of heat, and even tent them with a little piece of plastic or some Agribon cloth or things like that. But I'm going to say they could probably drop down into the 30 degrees, maybe into the high 20s for very short periods of time, and you're going to be fine. You probably, if they go below that, you're probably going to lose some limbs and some branches and things like that, but they'll probably bud back out. If you go into a hard frost under 25 degrees, that's anybody's guess at that point.
Great. Where are you currently? Which markets, farmers markets, are you at?
Right now, we're doing the Santa Monica on Wednesday. We're doing the Pasadena on Saturday, the Mar Vista on Sunday, and the Hollywood on Sunday.
And what varieties you got?
Valencia Pride is the primary one right now. They're the one that are coming off hot and heavy. We've already finished up the Golden Lady. And the next one to start in probably in another few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, will be the kit, and then it'll run through late September.
Okay. I got 2 rootstock questions here for you. Mm-hmm. Of the 3 varieties, do you have a preferred rootstock for a desert backyard grower? And then the second question is for coastal Southern California clay soil.
Yeah, for the desert grower, I really like. I would have, a couple of years ago, I would have told you that probably the Manila, but I really like the Nam Doc Mai. It's a nice sized tree, very fast growing, very strong grower. So I think right now I'd lean toward the Nam Doc Mai. As for a heavier clay, I'd probably go with the turpentine, because you're going to get a lot of water retention. And one thing you need to be very careful in that kind of a soil is having your plants sit in that water for a long period of time, because the water hold just doesn't go away. So turpentine is one of the reasons they like it in Florida, I think, is the fact that it's pretty tolerant of that high water table and that heavy saturation long periods of time. So resistant to the phytophthora and different things that you can get from the long-term standing water situations.
Okay. For the dropped mangoes, do you know if they can be pickled?
Well, a lot of times they'll drop them at you know, just basically they're so small. You probably wouldn't want to deal with them. I mean, you know, you're talking about something that isn't even the size of I'm trying to think of, a pencil eraser. You know, they're just really, really tiny. The ones, once they, you know, usually by the time the fruit gets up to where it's even a couple, 3 inches in length or in size, it's gonna have already dropped them. So the fruit that's, you know, then I'm just gonna say, I guess you could, it'd be like little okras, I guess, in there, you know, be kind of, yeah, be something that might be fun to try. I don't know for sure, but you know, there's also things that happen during the growing season where, you know, the wind will come up, an animal will climb up in the tree, knock some green fruit off, and yeah, I'd pick those up and pickle them. They'd be fine. They're hard and they'd be fine.
And so then, do you do any thinning, or does this tree do like kind of self?
We do no thinning at all. We do absolutely no thinning. It's the tree does everything. I mean, basically, if it can hold it, it holds it. If it can't, it can't. We try to encourage it to hold it as much as we can, obviously, but they just no, we don't. As far as the fruit's concerned, is that right? When you mean thinning, you're talking about pulling off some of the fruit. No, we don't thin at all. In fact, like I said, I go out there and it's sickening to just sit there and look at all the fruit. I mean, you just basically got a carpet of these, you know, thimble-sized pieces of fruit all over the ground. You're just, you know, you sit there and you worry about, my God, am I going to be left with anything, you know? So no, I don't. I just I don't do any thinning at all.
So there's a couple questions here about mildew. Excuse me. One person commented they have a 9-year-old Alfonso tree. Every season it blooms, followed by powdery mildew and no fruit till now. Do you have any suggestions about dealing with mildew, or do you have issues with mildew?
Here in our environment, I don't have any trouble with mildew at all. In Florida, that black spot and things like that's a big, huge issue, and they use fungicides on them. But no, we don't spray with anything like that at all. Our humidity down here typically is so dry that you know, we're under 10%. In fact, I even go to the beach area or into the Los Angeles basin area, and you know, I can feel the humidity just, and even on a low humidity day for that area, we're typically under 10%, and you know, it's just not conducive to any kind of you know, that type of bacterial spot or fungus or anything like that. So yeah, I'm fortunate in that we don't have to deal with that. I know it really is devastating on the fruit because it grows into the fruit, and within about a week of it starting to develop on the outside skin, it'll start to ruin the fruit on the inside.
Okay. Question here about how do you stop varmint damage?
Yeah, basically try to keep things picked up so you're not, you know, you don't have a lot of varmints coming in, you know, you don't have the stuff laying around for them to eat. So you just don't try to encourage that. You know, the fruit kind of is up in the air and it hangs out on the tree. So we don't, you know, birds don't care for mangoes. They don't really pick at the mango fruit or anything like that. They leave it alone. Basically, the biggest problem I have is jackrabbits, and they don't eat a lot, and they usually find one and eat the whole thing down to the seed and clean it up over the course of a few nights, and they're not too terribly bad. And then we have some ground squirrels that can be kind of devastating, but you know, our losses due to varmints aren't very significant. And I don't know if that's just because we also have coyotes out here and they kind of make all the other varmints keep their heads down.
Got it. When is the best time to visit your farm?
Well, I mean, it depends, you know, we live here, and so we're here quite often and all the time, basically. So, you know, if just call to make sure there's someone here to show you around or whatever, and that's fine. You know, right now, if you come out, I would suggest coming out earlier in the morning or earlier in the day if you can, because if you're not used to 118 to 120 degrees, I'll tell you, it'll make a believer out of you. Very short, very quick. You start to see double real quick.
Got it. Yeah, so then do you have any other pest pressures? So you said birds don't like it, and then coyotes keep most of it down. Anything else, or is that?
No, you know, in fact, we don't, you know, outside of the potassium nitrate that I just, you know, go out and we'll apply foliarly. We don't really spray anything on the trees, or we haven't. And some of our trees, as I said, you know, date back to the mid-90s, and they've never been sprayed with any pesticides or anything. So, you know, they're really a incredibly, you know, disease and free fruit, and we just haven't had any issues at all. And, you know, I probably part of that due to our hot, dry environment. You know, bugs aren't real thrilled with that either. And then part of it, I think, has to do just with the natural resistance of the mango itself.
Okay. This one seems like a pretty scientific question. Can you grow mangoes in an old avocado orchard with Phytophthora in the soil? If I butchered that.
Phytophthora.
Yeah.
That's the root issue that we were talking about a lot of times with usually the Phytophthora and stuff like that's from a real heavy soil and a wet soil. Again, what I would do is just I would certainly lean toward the turpentine tree, and I'd probably plant a few trees just as some canaries in the mine shaft before I went whole hog on it. But it's, you know, those as a rootstock variety would be pretty resistant to the Phytophthora. And yeah, I would look at myself, I would think I'd look at, not terribly familiar with this, and I'm going out on a little bit of a limb, but I would look at the water situation, because you know, the Phytophthora and things like that's usually a wet environment situation. So now whether they leave spores and that type of thing, I'm not sure, but I would certainly think you could. And I've seen in Florida where the mangoes have been basically sitting in standing water. I visited one farm that was on one side of or right across the street from Lake Okeechobee, and literally the water table was about 4 foot down. So you know, they can handle some pretty wet environments.
Okay. In the heat spell, do you have any idea how many gallons of daily water is used by each tree, or an average?
28 gallons.
28. Wow. Daily.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, just to give you an idea, dates and citrus can be 200. Just give you a reference.
Okay. Interesting.
A day.
Here's a question here about pruning to keep the tree small. So if fruit grows on new wood, can pruning a tree and keeping it small allow for close planting of 8 feet?
Yes. Yes. In fact, there's a lot of new work that's going on where they're actually planting. I showed you the photographs, if you'll recall, of the Mexico, where they hedge it, and they do that. They've done that for years, just mostly for picking and maintenance and different things. But now they're getting in. They're getting into trellising and planting 800-900 trees per acre, which puts them on like 6-foot centers and trellising and with physical trellis materials and tie them up and things like that, and to get much higher production. So yeah, definitely that's the way things are going for the future.
Yeah, I saw some videos about trellising. I thought it was a pretty interesting method to go.
Apples and things like that are all going in that direction, very heavy right now. And I think it's just a few years, you're going to see a lot of different, just because, you know, when you do that, now you've got a lot of automation, you know, for your trimming, your pruning, your harvesting, everything becomes so much simpler, so much cheaper. And these days, that's all concerns on the commercial side of things. So I think you're going to see with a lot of different fruits and fruits and, you know, trees, orchard type situations are going to look more like grape fields than they will, you know, orchards in the future.
You also get to fruit production quicker, right? Because the tree doesn't have to focus on structure, just focus straight to fruit production.
Exactly.
Question here about foliar feeding. Do you have to use a wetting agent?
I don't. Like I said, again, there's if you go to the research sections of the at the mango.org, they have a whole paper. I think it's a 90 page paper that goes into all this kind of stuff in huge detail, what's done in all the different countries. And you know, I think some do, but you know, basically, I don't use it just because I'm lazy and didn't want to go out and buy it. But you know, potassium nitrate's pretty cheap. So if you know, and you just go through and spray, so it just kind of wets everything. And you don't really want to wet it to where it's running off anyway. And so I don't use it.
Quick question here. Do you use any wood chips or leaf for mulch on around the trees?
I have I have a chipper unit where we do chip and throw it down. I do use, I buy a compost material from a local producers in Indio, and we will spread it around the trees once a year, basically. Yeah, so I mean, just as a, yeah, there's some new stuff coming out too. I've seen from the group in Ventura, the UC extension service in Ventura, which does a lot of work with citrus and avocados and different things like that. And they're now coming up and they're saying, you know, the old thing where you would dig a hole, fill it up with half mulch and or compost and mix it back with the soil and put it all in. They're saying you don't have to do any of that. Just put the tree in. In fact, going from one layer to the next is even worse. You're better off just using the natural soil. So things are changing pretty quickly. But yeah, I do on the surface. One is the chips will keep kind of the grasses down and the weeds around the trees that can compete for the water. And then of course the compost is a nice little constant additive, and anytime I can improve the organic level of my soil, I kind of go that direction.
Great. Yeah, go ahead, Rod. Sorry.
Oh no, I thought I lost you there.
No, yeah, still here. Just one last question or comment. I heard most California mangoes A grade are shipped to Japan. Do you have any thoughts or insight on that?
That guy that I was talking about that tried to set up the farm down in Imperial that got his shipment sent back, that was where he was going to go to. The other mango growers here in the Coachella Valley, I mean, I know that they actually go to domestic. I know they go to local, typically higher end, Trader Joe's or someplace, those type of markets. But I really don't know. I don't know of anybody that ships to Japan, but there's not a lot of growers and commercial growers. There's about 3 or 4 of us down here in the Coachella Valley. And I think, that have any kind of numbers of it, and we're considered very small. You got to realize, I mean, the Mexico right now is shipping in over 2 million boxes a week of mangoes into this country. So, I mean, we're a pittance, by comparison to what's coming, what the big boys are doing.
Got it. Yeah, a couple more questions just came in and I missed 2 earlier. Any selective pruning to adjust for alternate bearing?
Boy, you might. The problem is that I don't like to do pruning until we get the fruit off. Obviously, you got, you don't want to cut off branches and stuff when you got nice fruit, immature fruit sitting on there. By the time you cut it off or the fruit comes off, let's say for some varieties, let's say you're in September, October, how much new growth are you going to get? That's the problem before you actually hit into the winter. So I'm not sure that the pruning would actually give you a whole lot. One of the problems I have here in the desert is I don't like to necessarily push the plant in the summertime because it puts out all those nice new leaves, and then 122 degrees hits us for 5 days and they all shrivel up and die. And so, I really back off on the fertilizers during the summer, and it kind of gives us a real short window to get, a lot of new growth, a lot of new flush before the winter hits. Fortunately, our summer typically, or our fall is very nice, and we'll get 2 or 3 months in the fall. But over on the coast, you can have your fruit hanging a lot longer. And then, actually, from what I understand, there's a group I know that has a small operation in Fallbrook area or Valley Center area, and they are not picking their fruit until late October, even November. And you're in cold weather at that point.
Okay. Is the kit a weaker grower than others? That's a question we had here.
They're a smaller tree. They seem to be a little more sensitive to the heat. I can say that. But I wouldn't say they're inferior. They're just a smaller tree. One thing I would be cautious about is making sure that if you do get a tree, get a grafted tree, because you're going to get clone performance. Grafted tree on a good rootstock is going to be important. If you can take the seeds of monoembryonic, kit, Valencia Pride, all that kind of stuff, but you don't know what you're going to get from that seed. We tried to do it for years and years, but what happened is we ended up with a lot of trees that had anthracnosis and so the bark was splitting and doing a lot of weird things and stuff, and the trees just didn't ever perform very well from a growth standpoint.
Okay. There's a question here about planting on a mound in clay soil. I guess that would make sense just to get it up higher if you have a water issue, but any thoughts about planting on a mound in clay soil?
No, I would think in the clay soil, they're trying to go for drainage, I would guess.
Yeah.
So, maybe add some sand too to try to improve the drainage. And I don't have any. I didn't see anything like that in Florida when I was there, and I know that they get some pretty heavy soils in that area as well. But basically, I think you're just trying to drain the water and keep the water from standing too long.
Have you ever thought about going full organic?
Yeah, the thing I have, basically with the mangoes, I could probably register as organic, with the exception that what I do is I take my hydroponic water, because I have these reservoirs that I recirculate for my hydroponic system, tomatoes, and I re-irrigate with that, or I put that back out to irrigate the trees with. And since it's not organic, I would kind of lose I guess I'd lose a little bit of water efficiency. That's where my focus has been. Not so much, I don't spray with pesticides, and I kind of, to me, organic is more pesticide free than it is, going with all the other things of organic where you got to use manure and different things like that. And I don't know, that now with the new food safety rules and regulations starting to use, it's going to be a big issue, a bigger issue for a lot of the organic producers where they are using actual raw manures and things like that, because I just don't, the FDA is going to start cracking down on a lot of that stuff, and it's going to be a bigger problem, so with foodborne illness and different things like that. So I don't know, I could probably do it with the mangoes, but it's just not something that I really am all that focused on.
Yeah, and you probably lose some efficiencies elsewhere in systems that you already have set up. So that's
Correct.
totally understandable. And then, the last question, how do we identify your mangoes at the store?
Well, one is you won't see them at the store, I don't think. Most of the mangoes that we sell to wholesalers go to high-end restaurants and that type of stuff. I don't know of any stores that they produce, or unless somebody comes and buys from us at a farmer's market or something and then takes them to a store, but I'd have no idea where, how, or what they would go or what they would do. We don't supply directly any stores.
So they need to come see you at a farmer's market. Is that what you're saying, Rod?
Farmers markets would be the best way to do it, or come out to the farm.
Got it. One last question just came in. What could dephamites and new leaf growth be an indication of? Any thoughts on that?
What was the definite, what?
Dephamites, DEFO.
Oh, mites, basically. So you're saying a type of a mite?
I think so. It's a new word for me.
MITE, is that?
Yeah. Deformites.
I think it's deformities.
Deformities. Leaf growth.
Oh, deformities. Oh, okay. On the new leaf growth, the biggest problem I would look for is salts. Be careful of over fertilizing. Fertilizer is a salt. That's what I think a lot of people do, is they have a tendency to over fertilize. They'll throw, if a little bit's good, I'll throw a lot more on it. You got to remember, fertilizers are salts. And, it's not just the burning you got to worry about, but even the lower end levels of those salts in the soil can give you a lot of deformities. Particularly, you'll see it in the new leaves. So that would be where I'd go. Now, I don't know, water wise and different things like that, but if you've got deformities, I would certainly kind of take a look at the salt end of things with a lack of any other, information to go on.
Great. And then there's questions about farmers markets again. So you go to Santa Monica on Wednesdays, right? You go to Pasadena. And then what were the other two you went to? I'm sorry about that. Mar Vista, which is just right off the 405 by the 10 down in Mar Vista, just a little bit east of Venice Beach. And then North Hollywood is the other one, is right now that we're doing. And again, we're quite small. We're lucky. We're maxing out 500-600 boxes a week, and so we just don't get with that in the wholesale. We just don't get to a lot of markets. But shipping is also available too, right?
Yes, yeah. And the number, I don't know if you recall, I don't know if you grabbed it, but the number that I gave you for Jason, you can get it off our website too, and he's the one that handles all that stuff. I'm getting too old.
Thank you so much, Rod, for your time. Awesome presentation, so much information. So we do have it recorded. You can go back and check it out for all of our visitors. Thanks again, Rod. That was incredible. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this up now. So
very good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guys. So again, we're here the first Thursday of the month. again, if you put your email address into the chat box, we will send you the link for the YouTube channel, the YouTube video. Also got a the workshop at the Demonstration Orchard, August 28th. Information for that will also be in the email. Yeah, and then if you want, definitely love to have you guys join the group if you're not a part of it, Inland, the IE chapter or CRFG chapter, because there's plenty of them around the state. There's so many benefits for being a part of the group. You get so much access to so much information about growing fruit trees, all sorts of different types of rare fruits, stuff that you could not find in the store, similar to Rod's wonderful mangoes, which you can't get in the store, but you can go pick up one of his trees and grow them at the house. But yeah, if you guys got any questions, give us a shout. If not, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you guys next month. Warren, you can watch this. It'll be posted on YouTube. So if you put your email address, we will get you, we'll send it over to you. So thanks so much, guys.